Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Here are your hosts, Jeffrey Tobias Halter and Amanda Hammett.
Well, good afternoon. Today we are welcoming back Samantha Pitre Quillen to talk about just such an important topic, and that is workplace stress, hybrid work, and talent management. I'm Jeffrey Tobias Halter, and today I am enjoying a nice Pinot Grigio on a hot summer day in Atlanta. Welcome, Amanda. What are you drinking these days?
Well, unfortunately, I am out of town and driving back to Atlanta after this. So I am drinking water so that everybody on the road stays safe. But it is my honor to welcome my friend Samantha Pitre Quillen back to Wind Down Wednesdays. Samantha, if you didn't catch her first episode, you got to go back and check that out. But Samantha is a career coach who also advises companies on workplace culture. She's an executive coach, C-suite human resource professional with over 15 years of experience in facilitating various aspects of the life cycle of an employee, including talent management, retention, employee relations, leadership development, creating organizational structure, recruiting, process and policy creation, as well as succession planning. Basically everything everybody needs in the workforce right now. There you go. She's a one-stop shop, I guess.
So Samantha, welcome back. What's your beverage of choice today?
Thank you. I actually am, as I said, the last time I was here, I am drinking what we call our house cocktail, which is LaCroix, whatever flavor you wish, tequila, and a splash of Sprite. And so we call it the Quillen 5149. And this is kind of what we do all year long around our fire pit in our backyard. People actually are like, oh my goodness, you didn't make your cocktail. Or, we have friends. My husband is a cigar smoker. And so his friends are all like, he just makes it by the pitcher. So,
wow.
All right. Well, apparently Jeffrey and I are coming over at some point.
Oh, please do.
All right. So Samantha, just to remind the audience, in our previous episode, we discussed your client work and specifically your thoughts around hybrid work, which we are all experiencing these days, and also how organizations and managers can support that work. But today, let's talk a little bit more about your work advising companies on workplace culture, whatever the case may be. So would you mind talking a little bit about your corporate interventions, specifically the people and the culture?
Sure. I think one of the first pieces that companies really need to be very clear about is employees are savvy at this point, and they really want to see whatever your values, whatever your definition of your company culture baked in. So they want to see that baked into everything from how you recruited them to how you onboard them to the employee handbook, to what gets you promoted and recognized and what allows you from your day-to-day, how your managers manage you. So I think that for me and what I impart to my clients constantly is, if you don't want to be about this, let's not include this. So if you don't want to genuinely be inclusive, let's not use inclusivity. If you do not genuinely want to be diverse beyond demographics and be diverse in thought, in strategy, in customer base, if you don't want diversity to be part of your entire process, right? The entire life cycle of your employees, your customers, your vendors. If you don't want diversity to touch all of that, let's not use it. And I think that is because employees are so savvy now that, performative theatrics is no longer going to cut it for culture.
Fair.
So mental health is such a huge issue in the workplace. In my opinion, it's really the elephant in the room. Whether it's a person's mental health or, quite frankly, it could be their children's mental health. It could be their parents' situation that they're dealing with or a close friend. And it's something we never, ever talk about. Can you talk about formal things companies are doing? And then secondly, what advice do you have for people who might be concerned about raising a mental health or burnout issue with their company?
So I think a couple of things, right? And when you talk about structurally, I think that understanding that folks are dealing with more than whatever that they are bringing to work. They are coming with, as you said, their children's mental health, their spouse's mental health, their parents' mental health, their own personal mental health. Even a person who I think deems themselves to have a healthy habit and routine around mental health is looking at various things in national media. They're looking at various things going on specifically in their communities. So I think that creating space for people to say, I need a minute, whether their minute is a formal minute and they can just step away, or it's a day, or it's a week, or what have you. I also think being intentional about creating those opportunities for space. So if something happens within the national media, creating some type of way to respond to that. Maybe it is, we're not going to start until the day and start talking to clients until noon. We are going to cancel our morning meetings or our afternoon meetings, or today we just go do what makes you feel good. Creating some buckets in the actual calendar of your business to give people space and time for mental health. And what do I mean by that? I mean, maybe it's a 90-minute block every single week where folks don't have a meeting and you are literally encouraged to do whatever feels good to you. Maybe it is a company-wide opportunity for 30 minutes to meditate, to do a group meditation. And they can come in and out and be flexible around that. But it's creating those buckets that signal to people that their mental health is a priority. And I think that to your first point, which I'm answering second, is that will alleviate some of the stigma and some of the concerns around raising up burnout and raising out mental health. And I think the other piece is not penalizing people when they say, hey, this is too much, but really sitting down with them and saying, okay, tell me what is really too much. As I mentioned, I think in the last time we chatted, we looked at a client's meeting schedule and where they were asking senior leaders to be and for how long. And I said to the CEO, this is unnecessary. I don't think that you literally have your senior leaders in 8 hours of meetings a week. And that's the scheduled time. That's not the actual preparation time. That's not the actual time it takes for meetings to start and end. And that's not a good use of your company's time. So we created a tagline that says, am I the best? Really getting senior leaders thinking about, am I the best person to show up at this meeting? Because some of those leaders were sitting in meetings that they didn't say anything. Some of those people should be sending other team members. Some of those meetings should be canceled, right? We've all sat in a meeting where we all walked away like, this should have been an email. So really looking at that and being preemptive and being honest about that. Should this be an email? Do all of us need to be here for this decision? I think the last point I want to make about burnout is really also, are you proactively preventing burnout? Are you a manager are you looking at the vacation calendar and not just approving vacation, but looking at the calendar to say, Joe hasn't taken a day off in 3 months. Hey, Joe, I need you to go and do something. I don't care if you sit in your house. I don't care if you go walk your dog. I don't care if you do a staycation. Go get a flight, whatever you need to do, but go do that. And I think the other piece is actively, creating some fun things where maybe people are sharing as we enter into this great summer, this great summertime where we're getting out and we're really moving around in greater detail. Maybe folks should start sharing trips that are 2 hours away, trips that are 3 hours away. Maybe as a collective, maybe that's a Slack channel. If you have a Slack or similar messaging kind of apparatus, maybe that's a Slack channel, right? Quick getaway, cheap flight, anything that really gets people thinking about how do I leverage this? And also, I'm sorry, I'm going a little long, but I just want to throw in, and I think the formal things, of course, Jeffrey, are necessary. EAP opportunities, and really building out and working with your providers, your insurance providers, to make sure that mental health component is present for them.
I love all of that. And I think that that's something that we all need to be doing a better job of. It's just recognizing those things. But I'd love to spin you back for a second. You mentioned a few informal things that companies can do. You specifically mentioned like a Slack channel, things like that. Do you have any other ideas just to kind of get the brains working of the audience? What are some other informal things that companies could do to help manage stress, burnout, all of those good things?
Well, I think the first thing that folks can do is really look at your company culture. I was featured in a Boston Globe article recently where I told this story, and I feel like, Amanda, you've heard this story before, of having a boss who would literally walk into the ladies' room. She was also female, but sort of want to have these full-fledged conversations with me in the bathroom, through the stall. And really nobody said to her, hey, time out. This is a sacred space. And I think little things like that, looking at those pieces of your culture, like, wait a minute, are we giving folks time to do small things like walk away from your desk? What kind of situation are we walking back into? I remember, and we can all tell these horror stories, that you go on vacation and you walk back into 1,700 emails. And really looking at those kinds of pieces structurally to say, wait a minute, does everybody on these emails need to be on these emails? Does everybody who's listed here need this information? And is there a way we can sort of structure this information, whether that's in a Confluence file, whether that's in Google Drives, whatever ways, in some ways that doesn't clog up email? And this is for a very small company, and I get the larger that you grow, the more this won't work. But we gave everybody an imaginary bank of money. So every team member had $350 a month. And each email, based off of how someone was listed in the email, had a price associated with it. So if you couldn't exceed your $350 lot each month. So that made people choice about, can I answer all of these questions? So I'm not sending three emails that answer one email's worth of questions. And how do I structure this so that I don't have to ask another question, or so that they don't have to ask another question, those kinds of things. And it was a fun game. We gamified it. But folks enjoyed that and started to really, and were very competitive, right? So they were looking to see, okay, who spent all their money last month, and those kinds of things. And then we also had, at the end of the months, and we did this for 4 months with them, but every couple of weeks we had sort of a best practice. Like, hey, how are you maximizing and sending fewer and fewer emails? But it really opened up some folks' eyes, right? Because there were people who 2 weeks into this experiment were like, I'm out of money. And so it was like, okay, well, clearly you're sending too many emails, and really getting folks to be intentional and think about what they're doing. And in terms of really leveling up mental health, I think the other piece is asking or providing resources in abundance, in overabundance, right? So do you have on Slack or in a Google Drive or anywhere, do you have a list of a place where employees can go and add their therapist's name, for instance, or make a recommendation, and make a recommendation maybe for children's therapists or for specific religious affiliations? Do you have those kinds of things? Have you worked out a partnership with something like BetterHealth, where maybe you're giving employees, a 10%, 20% discount on their first month? And also, are we openly talking about our therapists? Right? As senior leaders, are we talking about, hey, I have a therapy session, and are we showing the behavior we want our employees to follow? So if an employee has something that is private blocked off on their calendar, are you asking them to write over that? Or are you giving them the space and an opportunity to do that?
So, so many great examples, and we've kind of got to wrap up. I want to ask you one last question. It's really around the people working at home, because it's so hard when the commute is from your bedroom to your kitchen table. And we talk about stress and everything that's going on, and particularly women, who are so many of our listeners. What one piece of advice do you have for at-home workers to get a little more balance?
I would say have a way to start and end your day. however that is, right? So whether that is putting all of your office, even if you're on your dining room table, have a box that all of your office accoutrements go into. Have a, if you really can't do that, let it be a sheet, right? So you put a sheet over it and you throw the sheet off of it, but have a real way to mark the ending of your day. And I think when you are in your home specifically, and I live in New York City, I have my own office now, but I remember the days of being in a studio apartment and you didn't have that much space. So you didn't have an office. So your desk probably was in a corner in your living room or in your bedroom, those kinds of things. And in a studio, it's all one space. So really making sure that you are creating some ends of day, right? Something that symbolically says the day has ended and now I can go do these things. I also think creating some, I know you said one, Jeffrey, but I'm just going to give you one more. It's also creating some defining around what that looks like, right? So defined work times so that you are clear that I have time for that. Mm-hmm. I don't have to stress about the dinging of the email because I know at 8:30, at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, whatever time your day starts, I'm going to be able to remove the sheet, if you will. And I will be able to have enough time where I can really focus and devote what I need to work. So I can now sit comfortably knowing that my free time is actually free.
I just want to say, I love that idea, that real psychological trigger where you're like, my day has ended. Whether it's you take it Samantha's advice and do the sheet, I actually close the door to my office and I walk away. But if you live in New York City and that's not an option, figure out some way to have that ritualized ending of your day. Samantha, first of all, thank you again for joining us. You've given us, between these two episodes, I hope everybody took notes because you probably gave like 20 solid tips that someone could implement today. So thank you for that. On behalf of Jeff and myself, thank you to our audience for joining us once again. And we will see you in the very next episode of Wind Down Wednesday. Thank you, guys.
I'm Jeffrey Tobias Halter. Thank you for joining us this week for Wind Down Wednesday.
Thank you for joining us for Wind Down Wednesday. If you like this episode, please subscribe to receive more episodes straight to your inbox.